Afternoon, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I'm back down here at the Pathfinder Outdoor Classroom. We just finished up a 4-day navigation intensive course, but I wanted to go ahead and get a video out today because I haven't put one out since Wednesday or Thursday of last week, so I thought it was about time. And I wanted to continue with our series on Depression era gear because as I'm building my kit, not only for the squirrel camp, but also for hunting season this year and trapping season, to be able to do some Depression era stuff for you and do some encampments, things like that, I wanted to go over some of the kit as I build it. So what I want to talk to you about today is cook kits. And obviously you can get as extravagant with cook kits as you want to, just like you can today. You can have this huge camp cook set if that's what you want, if you've got a tent and conveyance and things like that. And there was plenty of conveyance in the Depression era to carry large kits like that. Or you can have something that's more packable. And I've kind of chosen to go between the two. And I'm going to show you, I don't carry all of this. I have a camp box over here that I carry it into, that I place it in so it can be taken from a conveyance to a tent. And then there are things that can be taken out of here and put in a backpack to make a more backpackable kit. So we're going to talk about all of those things today, talk a little bit about history, talk a little bit about skillets and things like that with you today as well. And I want to show you a couple things that you may not have seen before. So stay with me, we'll get started. Okay, so let's start out by talking about utensils, all right? So the first thing is an old butcher knife. And this is a hand-forged butcher knife. This is the infamous $3 butcher knife. I've had this thing forever. It's hand-forged, so it definitely fits the period because a hand-forged butcher knife could have been had anytime probably between the 1700s and the 1900s and still today. So something that's hand-forged like this, especially of this age and this patina, definitely would fall into the category of something in a Depression era cook kit because many times they would take things straight from the house and use it. And this could have been straight from the kitchen drawer. I definitely have a decent sheath for it, so I don't have to makeshift that on the fly. I've got a nice belt sheath for it made out of brown leather that's got copper rivets in it. It's sewn all the way down with a welt in it. So it's a nice sheath, but it's a very common type knife, okay? Now, along with that, you're obviously gonna need something to eat with. We talked about you could just carry utensils again, right out of the drawer at the house. You could just have a fork and a spoon that were typical of the period, along with your knife, and you've got everything you need. If you wanted to do something a little fancier than that, this set right here, I actually bought quite a while ago. This is not the Swedish set. It doesn't have the 3 crowns on it. And surprisingly enough, I found an ad for a set almost exactly like this in a 1930s catalog. So this is something they definitely could have had in the 1930s, and it just nests together very simply just like this to go into a packet, exactly like the Swedish stuff does. I would suspect that this is something from World War I time frame or something that was discovered during the World War I time frame and reproduced possibly for mass sale into the outdoor market. Again, I'll put the ad that I found these in on this thing because I'm a big believer in provenance. I want to find advertising or listings of these items that I'm using so that I know they were commonplace, not something that was invented at a certain time and possibly never used, but something that was fairly commonplace. And if you can find advertising for it, that generally means it was fairly commonplace, okay? So that covers utensils other than cooking utensils. And really, I keep that pretty simple too, right? A simple old 1930s can opener for opening cans of beans and things like that. And a carbon steel spatula. And again, this may not be things that I would carry off into the woods, although I might carry the can opener, right? Or I might just use my knife. But the spatula is probably something I wouldn't carry unless I were in camp because I can carve a spatula pretty fast with any knife in the woods just to flip an egg or something like that if I wanted to in a skillet. Very common in that era to have advertising from some local business or business of some kind on utensils like this. Spoons, cake knives, spatulas, all these old carbon steel implements. A lot of them had this advertising stamped into them. So this S&H green stamped one is perfect for the period. It is a carbon steel spatula, so it's very, very flexible. And it's actually one of my favorite pieces of camp cook kit if I'm going to be cooking in camp, all right? Now, one thing I also wanted to show you today that I found a long time ago, and I've sold one of them in my Etsy store, and I've got one left I kept, is this piece here, okay? And if you look at that, it looks just like the cook racks that we sell today on our website. that are sold all over Amazon that lots and lots of people use in their videos and things like that, except it has a handle on it and a keeper here that just kind of keeps that handle together where they formed it around here to put the mesh on it, okay? But this is from the 1930s, and it was some kind of a baker's drying or cooling rack of some kind, probably, that you could cool cupcakes or something like that onto. That's my guess. I really don't know exactly what it was used for. Somebody can tell me if they know in this video, that'd be great. But I saw James Bender was using a cheese grater over a fire in one of his videos for a cook rack. And in my mind, this is almost a ready-made perfect cook rack for over the fire between two logs. And it has a handle to be able to move it around with a pair of gloves easy enough, or pick up your steak or whatever you're cooking on it and pull it completely off the fire and move it over to where you're at to let it cool and to eat it. So this is a great piece of gear for that 1930s style kit, that Depression era style kit. Again, it may not be something I'd backpack, but most likely would be because of its lightweight and flat packability, okay? Now, I also have a cook chain here, and chain is chain, right? This is a piece of jack chain. Obviously, jack chain was available back then. It's got 2 S-hooks on it, but it can be used to throw over a galley pole in place of making something off the landscape, to adjustably hang a bush pot or something like that over the fire by hooking it through the bale and moving the chain up and down wherever you wanted it. It's a very simple device. It doesn't take up a lot of room. So I keep this in my camp cook kit so that I can take it on the trail or use it in camp, and I don't have to carve something if I don't have time or don't want to. All right, now let's get to the nitty gritty of things and what we're gonna cook in, okay, and on. Obviously, we talked about this as an over the fire type thing. I did a video not very long ago on this alcohol stove that I've just put in butcher paper. And the reason it's in butcher paper is just in case it were to leak for some reason. But it is a very simple, old, early 1900s alcohol stove. And I did a video demonstrating how the stove worked and showing you how good it worked at the time so that you could see it operational. But this thing cooks unbelievably fast. It can hold a bush pot. It can hold a smaller bush pot. You can also put a skillet on it if you want to, if you're cooking eggs or something like that. But it's just something to cook quickly in camp if you wanted to, and you didn't want to cook something in the field and make a fire. You can carry this. It does fit into a bush pot easy enough. So if you're going to carry a large bush pot into the field, it would fit right into it. And it does fit into our 2-quart bush pot as well. I'd say this is a 1.5 quart bush pot, would be my guess, okay? Now that we've shown this bush pot, let's talk about bush pots, okay? We often think today that we are the inventors of ultra lightweight and lightweight gear, but this bush pot is made of tin, okay? They call these berry pails or lunch pails, but they were tin, and they were tin soldered at the seams, and they cook and boil water just fine if you want to cook in them. And I have a piece right here that's even smaller that actually has folding handles, very, very similar to what you see today, made in the 1930s, okay? It has a lid on it, so I can cook over the fire in this. I can use this for a drinking cup if I want to, and just have an extra small container over the fire if I wanted to cook something else besides what I was cooking in a bush pot or besides what I was cooking in a skillet. Now, if I wanted something heavier duty than this, I was worried about this tin, not being durable, which I'm not really worried about that. It's pretty durable. Obviously, it's made it since the early 1900s, so it's probably pretty durable. But I also have a graniteware bush pot, and the same lid fits the graniteware that fits on that one, and the stove actually fits in the graniteware one as well. They're virtually the same size. The difference being that the graniteware is going to be much safer in the modern day to cook with because there's no seams inside of it that are solder that could contain lead. So if you're looking for some kind of a period cook set that's going to be ultimately safe to use, graniteware is going to be your friend, right? So that takes care of kind of bush pots. Now, drinking cups, the same story applies, right? I could drink out of this, but it is probably tin soldered as far as the lining goes on the crimps and things like that. Same thing with this one. It's probably tin soldered somewhere in there in the crimps. So you may have lead, not solder, but a tin cup like this, very, very commonplace for anybody in the Depression era. But Graniteware was just as common. So you could use a graniteware mug, Cowboy coffee mug, very easily, and they're virtually the same size. So they're going to take up the same amount of room in your pack. The graniteware is just a little heavier. Like I said, you're going to sacrifice one thing for the other. You're sacrificing safety for a little bit more weight. Probably they carried these much more often than they carried these. However, this is going to be safer for you in the modern era to eat and drink and things like that out of if you chose to do that. Now, lastly, let's talk about skillets real quick, and then we'll talk about a couple of the peripherals real fast, all right? So skillets. This is an actual cold handle and cold handle brand skillet, but don't confuse that cold handle brand with cold handle skillets, because there were many, many brands of these cold handle skillets. There was Banner, there was Deluxe, there was Acme. There were ones that had advertising on them. I've got some from Woolworth. I've got some with hardware store advertising on them. I've got some with steel advertising on them from a steel mill. I've got lots and lots of different brands of these because I collect these skillets. I've probably got 20 this size, all different brands. So there's lots and lots of brands of the skillet. The cold handle portion of it means, and this is what people kind of butcher on the internet today, they call lots of things cold handle skillets that aren't cold handle skillets. Number one, it's a thin gauge steel, very thin gauge steel, okay? In fact, they warped a lot if you left them on the fire and didn't have something inside them to cook, they would invariably warp. Now, they made them a little thicker than this as well, and I've got some of those. It depends on the manufacturer that made them what the gauge of steel is. However, what they all have in common is they're one solid piece of stamped metal, and they have a wraparound piece here that has a blockage here so that you don't get food and grime and nastiness up inside the handle where you can't clean it, okay? That's important. And that dead airspace between here and the bottom was supposed to make it a cooler handle to hold on to when you're cooking. Are these actually cold handles when you go to cook in them? No, they get hot, okay, period. But the difference between a true cold handle skillet and just a carbon steel skillet is the one piece solid construction here with the fold over, okay? If the handle's on this thing separately from the skillet, it is not a cold handle skillet, okay? And I'm gonna show you one of those. Again, this is very lightweight. Something like this and this that fits almost perfect in it would be an easily packable cook set that would weigh virtually, I mean, there's almost no weight to this. If I had to guess without putting this on a scale, I'd say this thing probably weighs less than 8 ounces and way under a pound with the two of them together, okay? Now, the one that I choose to carry most of the time is actually this one. It's a larger skillet, and they do have larger cold handle skillets. They came in 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16-inch size skillets you could get in that cold handle type skillet. But this is one that I had never seen before when I bought it, and it is a carbon steel skillet with an attached handle, so it's not a cold handle skillet. It's just a carbon steel skillet, and it had a wood handle with basically just a piece of wire that could be pulled out of there and bent over, almost like some kind of a keeper clip, all right, that you could put inside here, drop it through the hole, bend it over, and it gave you an extended handle on that skillet to cook over the fire. And when you were done, you could remove the handle to make it a smaller package to carry or to pack into a box or something like that, or stand up sideways and lay the piece on the side. However you wanted to do that, it made a smaller package by having a removable handle. The new skillet that we're coming out with, this carbon steel, is about this thickness, maybe a little bit thicker than this, and the handle folds underneath like our current stainless steel skillet so that it reduces that footprint of the skillet when you go to pack it, okay? Same concepts. This is a very old skillet. This is probably from the 1930s, so there's nothing new. Things are just redesigned and changed, okay? So that would be a good thing to have on its own, would be a skillet, because you can cook just about anything in a skillet that you can cook anywhere else. And if you do it right, you can cook multiple things in a skillet and have a full meal just with one skillet as your cookware. And I watched a video by Nathan Logden the other day talking about a camp that he did with a buddy of his, and they used one skillet to make all of their food other than the fire. They baked some potatoes in the fire and things like that, but their coffee was made in a skillet, their meal was made in a skillet, all of that stuff was made in one skillet. So something like this would be a perfect option for that. And this one's heavy duty enough that if you left it on the fire accidentally too long, or you're cooking steak in there or something, you're not gonna overheat the bottom of it and warp it either, okay? So that takes care of our skillet options, all right? Now, The other thing that I have is I have a thermos here. This is a vacuum thermos from the 19 teens, okay? This is actually a thermos brand. It has a cup that you could drink out of, although it's aluminum. Probably burn your face off trying to drink out of that thing. So I'd probably defer to the graniteware for that. And it has a cork stopper instead of a screw stopper with a vacuum glass piece inside. And this stuff will keep your liquid hot for a good long time. So if you were walking away from camp to go hunting for the day or something like that, you can slide this in your backpack with your coffee in it or your hot cocoa, whatever the case may be, and you're ready to rock and roll for the day out there in the woods hunting, all right? The last thing I want to show you, well, no, there's a couple things I want to show you still. Obviously, if you decide to take a stove, you're going to take fuel. You've got to have the fuel for the alcohol stove. So a tin of alcohol and a small funnel is always going to be a good thing. And if you've got a box, you can carry that. If you're walking out in the woods with a backpack, maybe you want to forego this stuff and just fill the tank up before you leave. All right. One more thing I want to show you real quick. Now, I'm not going to put this on the table because it does drip a little bit. Because it is a Lister bag, it's a canvas bag that swells when you fill it with water. This is called the Desert Camping Water Bag, okay? And it's not going to hold water forever. It's not a solid canteen. It was made to go down to the creek, go to the well pump, fill this bad boy up. It has evaporative cooling, obviously, because it's wet. So in hot weather, the water's going to cool from evaporative cooling. And that was really the reason for that design. It wasn't meant to hold water for a long period. It was meant to cool water that you wanted to drink in hot weather. And it's going to leak a little bit of water now and then, just like an old Lister bag would. However, it's going to hold water long enough for you to cool it down in the sun by evaporative cooling and get yourself a few refreshing drinks, because this one is about a liter or two, probably a 2-quart size. I've seen them a lot bigger than this, but I've never seen one this small size before. And I like this one really well because it is small enough that I can empty it out, dry it out, roll it up, stick it in my camp box, stick it in a backpack, and I've got a 2-quart container, just like the 2-quart military canteen, that I can fill with water, hang it in camp, and I'm taking advantage of evaporative cooling, and I can drink that water throughout the night because it's only going to leak, you know, a drop every 2 or 3 seconds out of this bag. So it's not like it's going to be gone in an hour. It's going to take hours for that thing to leak completely out. And if you're using it in the meantime, it's not going to matter. You can always go back to the creek and refill it again. All right. So this is the last piece of kit in my box as far as camp cook kit goes, is this Desert Camping Water Bag. All right, guys. So there's the camp box packed back up with the things that I chose to take. Obviously, I had to make decisions between a couple of those pieces, whether it's going to be tin or graniteware. The fuel is a little bit too high to fit in there very well, so I keep it separate. And of course, my knife goes on my hip. Everything else goes in the box and it's ready to pack away until camp is ready. Guys, I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, and for our business, all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back to another video in this series as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.